Flight attendant Kara Jennings thought she ruled the sky. To her, every flight was a kingdom where she decided who belonged in luxury and who didn't. So when she spotted 9-year-old Ariana Coleman, a poised black girl seated in first class, Kara's laughter echoed down the aisle, mocking, dismissive, dripping with prejudice. She grabbed the child's arm, sneering that economy is where you belong. But Kara's arrogance came crashing down the moment Ariana looked up and said, calm and unshaken, "My dad owns this airplane." In that instant, the self-appointed queen of the cabin met her fall from grace. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The fluorescent lights of Atlanta International Airport cast a harsh glare across the polished floors as Jordan Coleman straightened his daughter's collar. Ariana's eyes sparkled with excitement, reflecting the massive windows that revealed sleek jets waiting on the tarmac outside. "Remember what I always tell you about preparation?" Jordan asked, smoothing down his tailored suit. "Being early means being ready," Ariana replied confidently, patting her backpack. Inside was her favorite book about women pilots, a gift from her father that she carried everywhere. Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned slightly. "Just one quick call about the Los Angeles contract, sweetheart. This deal could help us lease planes to airlines across the whole country." Ariana nodded knowingly. At 9 years old, she already understood more about her father's business than most adults. She'd spent countless evenings listening to him explain how he built Jetstream Leasing from nothing, turning his passion for aviation into a thriving company. "5 minutes," he promised, stepping aside to take the call. Through the glass walls, Ariana watched a massive jet taxi to their gate. Her heart quickened with anticipation. She loved flying, especially in first class, where her father always insisted they sit. "The view is better up front," he would say with a wink. Jordan finished his call and returned, kneeling to kiss her forehead. His eyes were warm with pride. "Stay close to your dreams, sweetheart. You belong anywhere you sit." The words wrapped around her like a protective shield. The gate agent's voice crackled over the speakers. "Now boarding our first-class passengers for Flight 2317 to Los Angeles." "That's you," Jordan smiled, handing Ariana her boarding pass. "Go ahead and get settled. I'll be right behind you after I check on something with the flight crew." Ariana walked confidently down the jet bridge, her small, rolling suitcase clicking behind her. The familiar smell of new leather and fresh air conditioning greeted her as she stepped onto the plane. A flight attendant stood at the entrance. Kara Jennings, according to her name tag. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her lipstick perfectly applied. Ariana offered her brightest smile. "Good morning." Kara's returning smile flickered and died as she watched Ariana turn left toward first class, instead of right toward economy. Her blue eyes narrowed. Ariana found her seat easily. 1A, right by the window. She tucked her suitcase into the overhead bin, just as her father had taught her, and slid into the wide leather seat. The book came out of her backpack immediately, and she settled in to read about Bessie Coleman, the first African-American woman to earn a pilot's license. "Excuse me." Kara's voice cut through Ariana's concentration. The flight attendant loomed over her, lips pressed into a thin line. "I think you must be lost." Ariana looked up, maintaining her polite smile despite the knot forming in her stomach. "No, ma'am. This is my seat. 1A. Little girl, this section is for first-class passengers." Kara's voice dripped with condescension. "You must have taken a wrong turn. Let me help you find your proper seat." "But I have a first-class ticket," Ariana explained, her voice small but steady. "My father will be here in a minute. He's just—" Kara's laugh cut through the cabin like breaking glass. Several passengers turned to stare. "Oh, sweetie, this isn't a playground. These seats cost thousands of dollars." Ariana's cheeks burned. She'd never felt so small, so unwelcome. She reached for her boarding pass, but Kara was already moving, her manicured hand closing around Ariana's wrist. "Come on now," Kara said, yanking Ariana to her feet. "Let's get you back where you belong." The grip on her wrist was tight, too tight. Ariana stumbled as Kara dragged her up the aisle. Her beloved book slipped from her lap, pages splaying across the floor. Other passengers watched in uncomfortable silence, some averting their eyes, others whispering behind their hands. Tears welled in Ariana's eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "You belong anywhere you sit." But right now, with every eye in first class watching her humiliation, those words felt far away. Her lip trembled as Kara continued pulling her toward economy, past rows of judging faces. The flight attendant's fingers dug into her skin, and Ariana bit back a whimper. She'd never felt so alone, so powerless, so obviously unwanted. The murmurs grew louder. "Shouldn't someone say something?" one passenger whispered. "Poor thing must be confused," another replied. But no one moved to help. No one spoke up. They just watched as a 9-year-old girl was forcibly removed from a seat she had every right to occupy. Ariana's small shoes stumbled over her fallen book, its pages now bent and crumpled on the cabin floor. She wanted to pick it up, to clutch it close like a shield, but Kara's grip was relentless. The story of Bessie Coleman, a woman who had fought against prejudice to reach the skies, lay forgotten beneath the feet of passengers who couldn't see past the color of a child's skin. Ariana's feet stumbled beneath her as Kara continued dragging her up the aisle. The flight attendant's fingers dug deeper into her wrist, sending sharp pains up her arm. She tried to plant her feet, but the carpet offered no traction. "Please," Ariana whispered, her voice trembling. "You're hurting me." "Don't make this difficult," Kara hissed through clenched teeth, her practiced smile now a grimace. "We can't have you causing trouble up here. I'll find your real seat." An elderly woman in 2C touched Kara's elbow. "Dear, perhaps we should—" "I have this under control," Kara cut her off, voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Just a confused child who wandered where she shouldn't." Phones appeared in passengers' hands, some recording discreetly, others just pretending to read messages while watching the scene unfold. A businessman in a sharp suit smirked, clearly entertained by the spectacle. A young mother pulled her own child closer, looking away in discomfort. Ariana's chest tightened. The cabin felt smaller, the air thinner. Tears threatened to spill down her cheeks, but she remembered her father's lessons about dignity. She straightened her spine, just like he'd taught her. "I said stop!" Ariana's voice rang out, stronger now, echoing through the cabin. "My dad owns this airplane!" The declaration hung in the air for a moment before Kara's laughter shattered it, sharp, mocking, cruel. "Oh, sweetie," she sneered. "That's quite an imagination you have." Other passengers joined in with nervous chuckles. A man in an expensive suit rolled his eyes. "Kids these days," he muttered, "watching too many movies." But then, a deep voice cut through the noise like thunder. "Is there a problem with my daughter's seat?" The laughter died instantly. Jordan Coleman stood at the front of the cabin, his tall frame filling the space. His tailored suit and commanding presence drew every eye. But it was his expression, controlled fury beneath perfect composure, that silenced the cabin. Kara's face drained of color. Her grip on Ariana's wrist loosened, then dropped entirely. I was just... Remove your hands from my daughter." Jordan's words were quiet, but carried the weight of steel. Immediately. Ariana ran to her father, wrapping her arms around his waist. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder, but kept his gaze fixed on Kara, who had begun to stammer. "Sir, there must be some misunderstanding," she backpedaled, smoothing her uniform with trembling hands. "I thought she was lost. I was only trying to help." "By physically dragging a 9-year-old child?" Jordan's eyebrow arched. "Please, call Captain Ruiz to the cabin, and I'll need your supervisor's contact information." That's not necessary," Kara protested weakly. "I was just following protocol." "Now, Ms. Jennings." The use of her name made her flinch. She fumbled with the cabin phone, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the plastic as she paged the cockpit. Captain Ruiz appeared moments later, his weathered face concerned as he took in the scene. "Is everything all right here?" Jordan handed him Ariana's boarding pass. "Please confirm for Ms. Jennings that my daughter's first-class ticket is valid." The captain examined the ticket, then nodded. "Seat 1A, first class. Everything appears to be in order." He glanced at Kara, who had pressed herself against the galley wall. Her earlier confidence evaporated. Phones recorded openly now, capturing every moment of Kara's humiliation. The passengers who had laughed earlier suddenly found their seat-back magazines fascinating. Jordan turned to address the cabin, his voice measured but carrying undertones of barely contained anger. "The problem here isn't confusion, Ms. Jennings. It's assumption. You saw my daughter, a young black girl, and decided she couldn't possibly belong in first class. You didn't check her ticket. You didn't ask for clarification. You chose to publicly humiliate a child rather than consider that she might have every right to be here." Kara's face flushed red. "Sir, I apologize if my actions were misinterpreted." "Don't apologize for my interpretation," Jordan cut her off. "Apologize for your actions." The silence stretched taut as passengers held their breath. Kara's lips quivered before she forced out the words, "I'm sorry." The apology rang hollow, her eyes darting to the floor rather than meeting Ariana's gaze. Jordan nodded curtly and guided his daughter back to their seats. He picked up her fallen book, smoothing its crumpled pages before returning it to her hands. The boarding process resumed, but tension lingered in the air like static before a storm. Passengers whispered behind their hands, some shooting sympathetic glances toward Ariana, others simply looking uncomfortable with what they had witnessed, or failed to prevent. As the engines roared to life, Kara retreated to the galley. Her fingers pressed the crew intercom button, lips curling into a familiar smirk as she whispered, "We need to document this. He threatened me." In seat 1A, Ariana's eyes grew heavy as the plane taxied toward the runway. She drifted off to sleep against her father's shoulder, unaware that Kara's smirk had returned, unaware that this confrontation was far from over. The landing gear touched down with a gentle bump, as the Los Angeles sun painted the runway golden. Ariana stirred from her sleep, rubbing her eyes while Jordan closed his laptop. The cabin's tension had settled into uncomfortable silence during the 5-hour flight, broken only by Kara's clipped responses when serving drinks. "Are we there, Daddy?" Ariana asked, peering out the window at the palm trees swaying in the distance. "Yes, sweetheart. How about that book? Did you finish it?" Jordan kept his voice light, trying to push the earlier confrontation from both their minds. As passengers gathered their belongings, Kara moved through the cabin with mechanical efficiency, avoiding eye contact with the Colemans. Her earlier bravado had morphed into tight-lipped professionalism, though whispers followed her movements. "That's her," a woman in 3B murmured to her seatmate. "The one who tried to throw out that little girl." "Shameful," came the response. "In this day and age?" Jordan guided Ariana toward the exit, nodding politely to Captain Ruiz, who stood by the cockpit door. The pilot's expression was apologetic, professional, but tinged with unease. In the jet bridge, Two airline officials waited, a man and woman in crisp corporate attire, their badges identifying them as customer relations managers. Their smiles were practiced, their postures deliberately casual. "Mr. Coleman," the woman stepped forward, extending her hand. "I'm Patricia Martinez. We wanted to personally apologize for any misunderstanding during your flight today." Jordan shook her hand firmly but briefly. "Misunderstanding implies confusion on both sides, Ms. Martinez. What happened was quite clear to everyone present." The male official cleared his throat. "We take these matters very seriously, sir. Rest assured, we'll conduct a thorough review." "What's to review?" Jordan's voice remained measured, mindful of Ariana's presence. "Dozens of passengers recorded the incident. Your flight attendant made assumptions based on my daughter's appearance and acted inappropriately." "Of course," Martinez nodded, her smile never wavering. "We'll be in touch if we need any additional information. Please enjoy your stay in Los Angeles." The exchange felt rehearsed, sanitized. Jordan led Ariana through the terminal, where curious glances followed them. Several passengers from their flight had already posted videos online. At the hotel, a luxurious suite awaited them at the Beverly Wilshire. While Ariana unpacked her books, Jordan ordered room service and reviewed his presentation for tomorrow's investor meeting. The incident began to feel distant, like turbulence already past, until his email pinged. The subject line grabbed his attention immediately. "Urgent. Internal review. Allegations of employee threat by Mr. Jordan Coleman." Jordan's fingers tightened around his phone as he read, "Dear Mr. Coleman, this notice serves to inform you that Meridian Air employee Kara Jennings has filed a formal complaint regarding your conduct aboard Flight MA2274. Ms. Jennings reports feeling threatened and harassed during your interaction, citing aggressive behavior and intimidation tactics." The words blurred before his eyes. His throat tightened with disbelief and anger. The airline was turning the narrative, twisting his defense of his daughter into something sinister. A notification popped up, a direct message on his professional social media account. "Mr. Coleman, I'm Amira Watts with the Daily Tribune. I've been following the P. and first-class racism video from your flight today. This isn't the first incident of its kind with Meridian Air. I'd like to help you control this narrative before it gets buried in corporate damage control. They're already trying to spin it. Let me help you tell the truth." Jordan studied her profile. Award-winning investigative journalist, known for exposing racial discrimination in major corporations. Her articles had taken down corrupt executives and sparked policy changes. Her offer was tempting, but Jordan had built his success on careful navigation of corporate waters. He'd learned to pick his battles, to trust in systems and protocols. Surely the airline would see reason when faced with clear evidence and public scrutiny. He typed a polite response. "Thank you for your interest, Ms. Watts. I appreciate your offer, but I prefer to handle this through appropriate channels. The airline has assured me they're reviewing the situation." Amira's reply came quickly. "They'll protect their own before they protect the truth. This isn't about one flight attendant. It's about a pattern. Don't let them bury this story." Jordan started to compose another reply when his phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. "Sir, our leasing account with Meridian Air was just suspended without cause." He stared at the message, the reality of corporate retaliation sinking in. The room suddenly felt colder. Through the suite's window, he could see planes taking off against the setting sun. Some of them bearing his company's leasing marks, now threatened by his stand against injustice. In the next room, he heard Ariana humming as she arranged her books on the nightstand, blissfully unaware that her father's defense of her dignity might cost him everything he'd built. The laptop screen still showed Amira's warning. Jordan's finger hovered over the delete button, his faith in the system warring with the growing realization that some battles can't be fought through proper channels alone. The morning sun streamed through the hotel suite's windows, casting long shadows across Jordan's desk. He'd been up since dawn, reviewing documents and preparing for his investor presentation. The stress of yesterday's flight incident had followed him into his dreams, but he'd pushed it aside, focusing on the deals ahead. His laptop chimed with a new email. The sender, Sandra Lloyd, Executive VP of Human Resources, Meridian Air. Jordan's jaw tightened as he opened it. Mr. Coleman, your immediate attendance is required for a virtual hearing regarding yesterday's incident aboard flight MA2274. The meeting will commence at 9:00 a.m. PST. Please find the video conference link below. This matter requires urgent attention. Regards, Sandra Lloyd. Jordan checked his watch. 8:45 a.m. The timing felt deliberate, designed to catch him off guard. He glanced at Ariana, who sat cross-legged on the suite's plush sofa, absorbed in morning cartoons. "Katie," he called to his assistant in the adjoining room, "can you watch Ariana for an hour? I have an unexpected meeting." At his desk, Jordan straightened his tie and clicked the conference link. Sandra Lloyd's face filled the screen, elegant, perfectly composed, with eyes that reminded him of Arctic ice. Two other figures joined, Kara Jennings and a man introduced as legal counsel. "Thank you for joining us, Mr. Coleman," Sandra began, her voice carrying the practiced warmth of a snake handler. "We're here to address serious concerns about your conduct during yesterday's flight." Jordan leaned forward. "My conduct? I think you mean—" "Please," Sandra raised a manicured hand. "Let's allow Ms. Jennings to share her experience first." Kara's face appeared larger on screen. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her voice trembling. "I was just doing my job, following security protocols," she began, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Mr. Coleman became aggressive, intimidating me in front of passengers. He used his position as a contractor to threaten my job." Jordan watched in disbelief as tears rolled down Kara's cheeks. This was the same woman who had roughly grabbed his daughter's arm, who had laughed at Ariana's distress. "That's a complete misrepresentation," Jordan stated firmly. "I have witness statements from multiple passengers. I have video evidence." "Mr. Coleman," Sandra cut in smoothly, "we understand you're upset, but using your business relationship with Meridian Air to intimidate our staff is unacceptable. Ms. Jennings was performing standard security checks." "Standard security checks?" Jordan's voice rose slightly before he controlled it. "My daughter had a valid first-class ticket. Your employee made assumptions based on her race, publicly humiliated her, and physically grabbed her." "That's not true," Kara burst out, fresh tears flowing. "I would never. I have black friends. I just wanted to ensure proper boarding procedures." Jordan opened his laptop files. "I have the flight manifest here, passenger statements confirming my version of events, and social media videos clearly showing." "Mr. Coleman," Sandra's voice turned sharp, "this hearing isn't about social media drama. We're concerned about protecting our employees from hostile behavior. Several witnesses noted your threatening demeanor." The legal counsel spoke up. "Given your company's contractual relationship with Meridian Air, any abuse of that influence is particularly concerning." Jordan felt his pulse quicken, but kept his voice steady. "Are you suggesting that defending my daughter from discrimination is an abuse of influence?" Sandra's smile didn't reach her eyes. "We're suggesting that escalating this situation could have unfortunate consequences for ongoing business relationships. Your name has already been flagged in our system for aggressive behavior toward staff." "Flagged?" Jordan's fingers gripped the desk edge. "You're blacklisting me for standing up to racial profiling?" "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Coleman," Sandra replied icily. "One that could be damaging to both parties if made public. I'm sure you understand the importance of maintaining professional relationships and professional silence." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Jordan could hear Ariana's cartoon playing in the background, the sound of childhood innocence while adult corruption played out on his screen. "We'll be conducting a full review of all contracts with Jetstream Leasing," the legal counsel added. "Standard procedure when behavioral concerns arise." Jordan looked at their faces. Sandra's calculated calm, Kara's performative distress, the lawyer's bureaucratic detachment. A well-oiled machine designed to crush opposition under the weight of policy and procedure. "I believe we're done here," Jordan said quietly. "You'll be hearing from my attorneys." "That would be unfortunate," Sandra replied, "for everyone involved. Sometimes it's better to let small misunderstandings fade away, for the sake of business and family." The mention of family, the veiled threat against Ariana's future, made Jordan's hand shake as he reached for the laptop lid. Before closing it, he took one last look at Sandra's smug expression and Kara's tear-stained face. The laptop clicked shut. Jordan pushed back from the desk, his hands trembling with suppressed rage. The morning sun still streamed through the windows, but its warmth had vanished. On the sofa, Ariana laughed at her cartoons, the sound both precious and painful. She had no idea that her father's defense of her dignity had unleashed a corporate monster determined to destroy everything he'd built. Evening shadows crept across the hotel suite as Jordan paced, his phone buzzing with urgent messages from business partners. The day's investor meetings had been a blur, his mind stuck on Sandra Lloyd's thinly veiled threats. A knock at the door made him pause. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in her mid-30s, professionally dressed, with an air of quiet determination. "Amira Watts," she said when he opened the door. "We exchanged messages earlier about the flight incident." Jordan hesitated. "Ms. Watts, I appreciate your interest, but—" "5 minutes," she interrupted, holding up a manila folder. "That's all I need to show you what you're really up against." Something in her steady gaze made Jordan step aside. Ariana looked up from her homework at the dining table, curious about their visitor. "Would you like some coffee?" Jordan offered, his manners automatic despite his reservations. "Black, please." Amira settled into an armchair, setting her folder on the coffee table. "Like the truth, no sugar-coating." While Jordan prepared coffee in the suite's kitchenette, Amira pulled out documents, arranging them with practiced efficiency. The smell of fresh coffee filled the room as Jordan returned with 2 cups. "First," Amira began, sliding forward a stack of papers, "meet Sarah Johnson, flight attendant, fired last year for unprofessional conduct. Her real crime? Filing a discrimination complaint after being passed over for promotion 6 times." Jordan scanned the document, his coffee cooling forgotten. "Then there's Marcus Chen," she continued, presenting another file. "Frequent flyer status revoked for disruptive behavior." His disruption? Questioning why he was randomly selected for additional screening 8 flights in a row. "How did you get these?" Jordan asked, noting the internal timestamps. "I protect my sources," Amira replied simply. "But there's more. Much more." She spread out document after document, complaints buried, whistleblowers silenced, patterns of discrimination masked as policy. "This isn't just about one flight attendant's prejudice," Amira explained, her voice low but intense. "It's systematic. The airline has a whole playbook for handling discrimination claims. First, they isolate the complainant. Then, they reframe the narrative, make the victim look like the aggressor. Finally, they leverage their power. Contracts, connections, whatever it takes to maintain silence." Jordan set down his cup, the ceramic clicking sharply against the table. "I understand what you're showing me, Ms. Watts, but going public could damage everything I've built. My investors—" We'll abandon you anyway once the airline smear campaign kicks in, Amira finished. They're already moving against you, aren't they? Suspended contracts, surprise audits. Jordan's silence was answer enough. You can't win quietly against a system that profits from silence, Amira pressed. They're counting on your fear of scandal, your desire to protect your business. That's how they've gotten away with this for years. Daddy? Both adults turned. Ariana stood beside the table, her math homework clutched in her small hands. Her eyes were wide with worry. Did I do something wrong? On the plane? Her voice trembled slightly. Is that why those people are mad at you? Jordan felt his heart crack. He crossed the room in 3 strides, kneeling before his daughter. No, baby. You did nothing wrong. Nothing at all. But that lady said I wasn't supposed to be there, Ariana persisted. And now you're worried all the time. Jordan pulled her close, feeling her small frame against his chest. Over her head, he met Amira's steady gaze. In that moment, he saw the choice clearly. Stay quiet, and let his daughter believe she was somehow wrong, or fight back and show her what standing up for truth really meant. Ms. Watts, he said, still holding Ariana, if we do this, we stick to facts. No embellishment, no manipulation, just truth. Amira nodded, respect flickering in her eyes. Always, truth is the only weapon we need. They spent the next hour outlining a strategy. Ariana returned to her homework, occasionally glancing at their intense discussion. Amira's laptop glowed as she showed Jordan her research methodology, her network of sources, her plans for protecting both his business and his daughter from backlash. We'll need to move fast, she explained, before they can bury more evidence or pressure more witnesses into silence. Jordan agreed, feeling both terrified and relieved to finally take action. As they wrapped up their meeting, his phone buzzed with a new email notification. The sender was anonymous. The subject line read, Final Warning. Jordan opened it, Amira watching closely over his shoulder. The message was brief. Drop your complaint. We know things about your company you wouldn't want leaked. His hands clenched around the phone. The threat was clear. They had gone digging, looking for dirt, real or manufactured. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. Someone had invested serious resources into destroying him. Well, Amira said quietly, looks like we're not the only ones gathering information. She paused, studying Jordan's tense expression. Are you ready for what comes next? Jordan looked at Ariana, still focused on her math problems, her face scrunched in concentration. He thought of her question. Did I do something wrong? And felt steel enter his spine. Yes, he answered. Whatever it takes to make sure my daughter never doubts her worth again. Morning sunlight streamed through the hotel windows as Jordan scrolled through his phone, his coffee going cold beside him. His inbox was exploding. Dozens of reporters wanted comments on breaking allegations about Jetstream Leasing's financial practices. His hands shook as he opened the first link. There, splashed across a major business news site, were internal documents from his company, spreadsheets, contracts, bank statements. But something was wrong. The numbers didn't match his records. This isn't right, he muttered, pulling up his laptop to check against his actual files. These have been changed. Ariana was still asleep in the adjoining room as he dialed Amira's number. She answered on the first ring. I've seen it, she said, before he could speak. Someone's trying to make it look like you've been cooking the books. The timestamps on those documents are suspicious. They've been digitally altered. Jordan ran a hand over his face. How did they even get these files? Our servers are secure. About that, Amira replied, her voice tight with controlled anger. I've been making calls since 5 a.m. One of my sources says Meridian Air hired private investigators last week. They didn't just go after your public records. They hacked your system. "That's illegal," Jordan said, his voice rising. He glanced toward Ariana's room and lowered his tone. "We need proof." "Already working on it. Can you meet me at the Starbucks 2 blocks from your hotel? There's someone you need to talk to." 20 minutes later, Jordan sat in a corner booth across from Amira and a nervous-looking young black man in his late 20s. He wore an ID badge from Meridian Air's IT department, partially hidden under his jacket. "This is Malik Rivers," Amira introduced him. "He's taking an enormous risk by being here." Malik nodded, his eyes darting around the coffee shop. "They don't know I saved copies," he said quietly. "Of everything." "What exactly is everything?" Jordan asked, leaning forward. Malik pulled out a USB drive. "Proof that Meridian hired Blackstream Security to hack your servers. But that's not the worst part." He swallowed hard. "I found something else while I was tracking the breach. Something called priority packs." Jordan glanced at Amira, who was already taking notes. "What's priority packs?" "It's a passenger flagging system," Malik explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "Been in place for years. It automatically marks certain passengers for extra scrutiny based on—" He paused, looking sick. "Demographic factors." "You mean race," Amira said flatly. Malik nodded. "Among other things. Young black males traveling alone get flagged most often. But it's not just about security checks. The system sends alerts to flight crews about potential disruptions." He pulled out a printed document. "Like this one." Jordan took the paper, his stomach turning as he read. There, in cold corporate language, was a pre-flight alert about his daughter. "Priority packs identified in 1A. Juvenile female. Demographic code B1. Traveling with high-profile male guardian. Code B1. Monitor for seat compliance and behavior issues." "They marked her before she even got on the plane," Jordan said, his voice hollow. "That flight attendant, Kara, she was waiting for an excuse." "The system is designed to create problems," Malik said. "Flag enough people as risks, treat them with suspicion, and eventually someone reacts. Then they can say, 'See? We were right to watch them.'" "How long have you known about this?" Amira asked. "Too long," Malik admitted, shame crossing his face. "I helped maintain the database. Told myself it was just a job, that someone else would do it if I didn't. But when I saw what happened to your daughter—" He met Jordan's eyes. "I have a niece her age. Couldn't sleep thinking about her facing that someday." Jordan studied the young man, seeing the fear and determination warring in his expression. "You're risking your career." "Maybe," Malik agreed, "but some things matter more than a paycheck." Amira was already reviewing the files on Malik's drive. "This is dynamite," she breathed. "Employee complaints, cover-ups, internal memos about demographic management. They've been systematically discriminating against passengers and employees for years. And retaliating against anyone who speaks up," Malik added. "Like they're trying to do to you now, Mr. Coleman. Those leaked documents? That's standard procedure. They dig until they find something they can use, and if they can't find it, they create it," Jordan finished, thinking of the doctored financial records. His phone buzzed, another reporter asking for comment about allegations of financial impropriety. The story was spreading fast, exactly as the airline planned. "They think this will make me back down," Jordan said, his voice hardening. He looked at the priority packs report again, at the cold classification of his daughter as a potential problem before she'd even spoken a word. Standing, he walked to the window. Los Angeles traffic flowed below, endless streams of people moving through their lives, unaware of the invisible systems marking some of them as less worthy, less welcome. He thought of Ariana's face when Kara grabbed her arm, the confusion and hurt in her eyes. It wasn't just one prejudiced flight attendant. It was policy, programming, deliberate. Jordan turned back to Amira and Malik. his jaw tight with controlled fury. The paper crumpled in his fist as he spoke two words that would change everything. Now it's war. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the coffee shop windows as Jordan, Amira, and Malik huddled over a laptop in the corner booth. Malik's fingers flew across the keyboard, entering a string of complex passwords. "These files are triple encrypted," he explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been collecting evidence for months, but I never thought I'd find someone brave enough to use it." The screen filled with document after document, internal memos, training materials, system logs. Amira leaned forward, her reporter's instincts firing as she scanned the dates. "This goes back to 2012, she breathed. "Look at these demographic codes. B1 for black passengers, H2 for Hispanic families, M3 for single mothers with children." Her voice trailed off in disgust. Jordan's jaw tightened as he read through a training manual. Disruption risk factors include non-standard English, cultural dress, and group travel patterns. They turned prejudice into policy. "The algorithm flags anyone who fits these profiles," Malik explained, pulling up more files. "Then it automatically generates warning notices to the crew. Look at the statistics. Black passengers are 15 times more likely to be reported for seat compliance issues. Because they're being watched and challenged more often," Amira finished, taking rapid notes. "Create the suspicion, then use the results to justify the suspicion. It's a perfect cycle of discrimination." Jordan's phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. "Corporate security asking questions about server access. Watch your back." "We need to move," he said, showing them the message. "Sandra Lloyd's people will be looking for—" "Too late," Malik interrupted, pointing through the window. Two men in dark suits were crossing the street, heading straight for the coffee shop. Their earpieces and rigid postures screamed corporate security. "Back door," Amira said sharply, already packing up her laptop. "Malik, where's your car?" "Third level of the parking structure behind us." His hands shook as he gathered his things. "But they probably know my plate number." "Take mine," Jordan said, tossing him a key fob. "Black SUV, second level, space 217. Amira, go with him. I'll draw their attention." They split up. Jordan walked calmly toward the front door just as the security men entered. He made eye contact, then deliberately turned toward the restrooms. They followed, giving Malik and Amira precious seconds to slip out the back. The parking structure was a maze of concrete and shadows. Malik clutched his laptop bag close as they hurried down the stairs. Behind them, a door banged open. "There!" A voice echoed through the structure. "Stop right there, Rivers." Amira grabbed Malik's arm, pulling him behind a concrete pillar. "How many files can they delete remotely?" "None," he panted. "I air-gapped everything important. But if they get my laptop—" "They won't," she promised, peering around the pillar. Two more security men were entering from the ground level. "We need a distraction." Her phone lit up. "Jordan, my SUV's alarm is about to go off. Be ready to run." Seconds later, a piercing car alarm split the air. The security men hesitated, looking toward the sound. Amira and Malik sprinted for the vehicle, diving inside just as shouts rang out behind them. "Go!" Amira ordered, and Malik gunned the engine. They squealed up the exit ramp as more security vehicles appeared at the structure's entrance. What followed was a tense chase through downtown Los Angeles. Malik, despite his nervous demeanor, handled the SUV with surprising skill, weaving through traffic while Amira monitored their pursuers. "3 cars," she reported. "They're not trying to stop us. Just follow us to wherever we're going." "Then we don't go where we're going," Malik said grimly, making a sharp turn onto a side street. "Call Mr. Coleman. Tell him to meet us at Union Station." The next 15 minutes were a blur of calculated turns and false trails. They drove through shopping centers, doubled back through parking lots, and finally lost their tail in the maze-like streets of Chinatown. Jordan was waiting at their actual destination, a nondescript apartment building where Amira kept a secure workspace. They hurried inside, checking repeatedly to ensure they hadn't been followed. "Nice driving," Jordan told Malik as they settled into Amira's apartment. "Where'd you learn those moves?" "Racing games," Malik admitted with a small smile. "Never thought they'd be actually useful." Amira was already setting up her equipment, connecting to secure networks, and preparing to upload the files. "We need to get this out before they can spin it. Once the public sees these documents—" Her screen went black. Then red text appeared. "Account suspended for terms of service violation." "They're shutting down my access," she said, fingers flying as she tried alternate accounts. All of them. Every platform. Every backup. Jordan sank into a chair, finally letting out the breath he'd been holding since the coffee shop. "We hit a nerve," he said. "They wouldn't react this strongly if we weren't onto something big." "We've got something bigger than discrimination," Malik added, pulling out his phone. "While I was copying files, I found financial records. The airline's been using the priority pack system to deny compensation claims, void tickets, and force passengers into higher fares. They're not just discriminating, they're profiting from it." Amira stared at her blocked accounts, her expression hardening. "They think they can silence us faster than we can speak," she said. "But they don't know who they're dealing with." Amira's fingers moved swiftly across her backup laptop, uploading the files through a secure network she'd built for whistleblowers. The documents went live at midnight. Spreadsheets, internal memos, training guides, all revealing the airline's systematic discrimination. "It's done," she said, closing the laptop. "Now we wait." They didn't have to wait long. By dawn, social media was ablaze. The leaked documents paired perfectly with the viral video of Kara harassing Ariana. News channels picked up the story, showing the footage alongside infographics explaining the priority pack system. "Airline accused of systemic racial profiling," screamed one headline. "Secret passenger rating system targets minorities," declared another. Jordan watched the coverage spread from his hotel room, his phone buzzing constantly with messages from reporters, business partners, and concerned friends. The hashtag #ChantiTerFlyFair was trending nationwide, with thousands sharing their own stories of discrimination in the air. "Look at this," Amira said, showing him her tablet. "Former employees coming forward. Flight attendants who quit rather than enforce these policies. Ground crew who were told to watch certain passengers more carefully." The airline's stock price began to drop. By mid-morning, they issued their first statement. "Meridian Air takes these allegations seriously. Flight attendant Kara Jennings has been suspended pending a full investigation." But within hours, Sandra Lloyd appeared on major news networks, her face a mask of professional concern. "While we understand Mr. Coleman's frustration, we're deeply troubled by his attempts to weaponize a minor service incident for business advantage." She leaned into the camera, her voice dripping with rehearsed sincerity. "This is a clear case of a disgruntled businessman using identity politics to pressure our airline after failed contract negotiations. The timing of these leaked documents, which we believe to be altered, is highly suspicious." Jordan's phone rang. His largest investor was pulling out. "Too much controversy," they said. His company's stock began to fall too. In Amira's secure apartment, Malik paced nervously. "They're going to come after all of us," he said. "I've already gotten weird calls. Someone asking about my family back in Detroit. They're trying to scare us into backing down," Amira replied, but her voice wavered slightly. Her email was flooded with death threats. One message included a photo of her leaving her gym that morning. Jordan's security team reported suspicious vehicles following his car. Hotel staff mentioned people asking questions about his room number. He hired additional protection for Ariana's school. Late that afternoon, Malik called in a panic. "My apartment's been ransacked. Everything's torn apart. My backup drives are gone." "Get out of there now," Jordan ordered. "Come to the hotel. We'll figure this out together." But as the day wore on, the pressure mounted. Sandra Lloyd's message was gaining traction in certain media circles. "Why would a successful black businessman cry racism?" one pundit asked. "Isn't he proof the system works?" Jordan's business partners started distancing themselves. Contracts were delayed for review. Banks called about routine audits. The machinery of corporate retaliation was grinding into motion. In his hotel suite that evening, Jordan found Ariana sitting cross-legged on the couch, watching the news. Her face was there, blurred but recognizable, as commentators debated the incident. "Why are they blurring me, Daddy?" she asked, her small voice cutting through his exhaustion. "Like I did something wrong?" "They're supposed to protect children on TV," he explained, sitting beside her. She was quiet for a moment, watching as Sandra Lloyd appeared again, speaking about unfortunate misunderstandings and political agendas. "Are we the bad guys now?" Ariana asked softly, her eyes troubled. "That lady keeps saying we're hurting people." Jordan pulled her close, his heart aching at how this was affecting her. "No, sweetheart. Never. You remember what I told you about storms?" She nodded against his chest. "Some people hide from them, but planes have to fly through them to get where they're going." "That's right," he said, stroking her hair. "We just fly through storms others hide from. And you know what? Storms make us stronger. They show us what we're made of." His phone buzzed. Another threat, another warning, another attempt to make him back down. But holding Ariana, feeling her trust in him, Jordan found his resolve hardening. Amira arrived later with takeout dinner, her usual confidence somewhat shaken. "They've started digging into my past," she said quietly, after Ariana had gone to bed. "Old articles, college papers, anything they can twist." "What about Malik?" Jordan asked. "Safe. I got him to a friend's place upstate. But he's terrified. They're painting him as a disgruntled employee who stole company data." Jordan stared out at the Los Angeles skyline, lights twinkling like fallen stars. "They think if they threaten us enough, we'll go away. That we'll decide it's not worth the cost." "Is it?" Amira asked, not challenging, just honest. Jordan thought of Ariana watching the news, trying to understand why standing up for herself had caused such chaos. "We can't let them win," he said. "Not just for us. For everyone who's ever been told they don't belong in first class, in boardrooms, in positions of power." Amira nodded, pulling up her laptop. "Then let's give them something new to worry about. Those financial records Malik found? I've barely scratched the surface." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, a storm approaching. But inside, they worked through the night, knowing that sometimes the only way out is through. Jordan stood at the podium, adjusting his tie one last time. The hotel's conference room buzzed with reporters and cameras. Amira had helped arrange this press conference, making sure every major network was present. This was their moment to lay out all the evidence, the discrimination policies, the cover-ups, the threats. Harold Gaines, Jordan's business partner of 15 years, sat in the front row. He'd been oddly quiet these past few days, but Jordan had chalked it up to stress. Now, Harold wouldn't meet his eyes. "Good morning," Jordan began, his voice steady. "3 days ago, my 9-year-old daughter was humiliated on a flight because someone decided she didn't look like she belonged in first class. What we discovered next reveals a pattern of discrimination that goes far beyond one incident." Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. Jordan started presenting the evidence, slide by slide. The priority packs system, the internal memos, the patterns of harassment. But something felt off. The reporters weren't taking notes anymore. Some were looking at their phones, whispering to each other. Jordan saw Amira in the back of the room, frantically waving her tablet. A reporter stood up, interrupting him. "Mr. Coleman, how do you respond to allegations that you've been embezzling funds from your company's veteran pilot pension program?" The room erupted. More reporters jumped in. "Is it true you falsified safety records? Did you use company funds to bribe airline officials? What about the offshore accounts?" Jordan's heart pounded. "These allegations are completely false. I don't know what you're talking about." But they were all looking at their phones, reading something. Breaking news alerts flashed across the screens mounted on the walls. Aviation CEO Jordan Coleman accused of massive fraud. Harold slipped out of his chair and headed for the door. That's when Jordan knew. "The press conference is over," Amira announced, rushing to the podium. She practically dragged Jordan off the stage as reporters shouted questions. In a side room, she showed him what had just hit the internet. Documents, spreadsheets, emails, all perfectly crafted to make it look like he'd been stealing from his own company for years. The documents focused specifically on funds meant for veteran pilots' pensions, a deliberate choice to destroy his reputation. "These are fake," Jordan said, scrolling through them. "But they're built from real internal documents. Only someone with deep access could have—" "Jordan." Amira pointed to the document properties. The last person to edit them, Harold Gaines. Security cameras showed Harold leaving the hotel through a service entrance, getting into a car with airline executives. Within hours, the airline announced they were deeply troubled by these revelations and were cooperating fully with authorities. Jordan's phone exploded with messages. Sponsors canceling contracts, partners backing out of deals, the stock price in freefall. Even supporters of the discrimination case were distancing themselves. "Harold was like a brother to me," Jordan said, his voice hollow. He and Harold had started with nothing, built everything together. 15 years of friendship, trust, partnership, gone. Amira worked her contacts, trying to get ahead of the story. But the airline's PR machine was in full swing. They painted Jordan as a fraud who had attacked them to cover his own crimes. Kara Jennings gave tear-filled interviews about how she'd just been doing her job, protecting passengers from a known fraudster's family. By evening, the damage was catastrophic. Banks froze accounts for investigation. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Former allies wouldn't take his calls. Jordan sat in his hotel room, watching his life's work crumble on live TV. Ariana was with his sister in a secure location. He couldn't risk her being hounded by reporters. His phone buzzed. A message from Harold. "It's just business, Jordan. Nothing personal. You should have backed down when you had the chance." Fury rose in his throat. He'd given Harold everything: partnership, trust, friendship. They'd celebrated each other's children's birthdays, spent holidays together, helped each other through hard times, and Harold had sold him out for a payoff. Jordan paced the room, mind racing. There had to be a way to prove the documents were fake. But Harold knew everything about their systems, their security, their records. He would have covered his tracks perfectly. A soft knock at the door. Jordan opened it. Empty hallway. But there on the floor, a single sheet of paper. "You don't own this airplane anymore." He crumpled the note in his fist. Through the window, he could see news vans gathering outside the hotel. His phone kept buzzing. More cancellations, more accusations, more betrayals. The empire he'd built from nothing was burning. The truth about the airline's discrimination was buried under an avalanche of lies. His daughter's humiliation had led them here, and now he couldn't even protect her from the fallout. Jordan Coleman, the man who had risen from Detroit's poorest neighborhoods to build a multi-million-dollar aviation company, stood alone in his hotel room, watching decades of work turn to ash. But as he stared at the crumpled note in his hand, something hardened in his chest. They thought this would break him. They thought taking everything would make him quit. They thought wrong. He pulled out his phone and called Amira. "Find Malik," he said. "He's not the only one in their IT department who's seen things. There's always a backup, always a trail. And we're going to find it." The night pressed against the windows, the city lights blurring through his tears of rage. His company might be burning, but from these ashes, justice would rise. They'd just made this personal. The next morning, Jordan sat in his sister's living room, staring at his phone. Another rejection email from investors. Another news alert about his fraud. Another former friend refusing to take his call. The walls were closing in. Ariana watched cartoons on the couch, but he could tell she wasn't really seeing them. She kept glancing his way, those wise eyes taking in more than a 9-year-old should have to understand. "Baby, come here," Jordan said softly. She came and climbed into his lap, something she hadn't done in years. She was getting so tall, so grown up. He'd worked so hard to give her everything, to show her that dreams had no ceiling, that determination could overcome any obstacle. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry I brought all this chaos into your life." "Why are you sorry?" Ariana asked, touching his cheek. "You didn't do anything wrong. I wanted to protect you, to make things right. But now—" His voice failed him. The tears he'd been holding back for days finally broke free. "Now, everything's falling apart. The company I built, all our dreams, they're taking it all away." Ariana wrapped her small arms around his neck. "Remember when I was scared to jump in the deep end at the pool?" Jordan nodded, wiping his eyes. "You told me being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you're scared." "I did say that, didn't I? And you told me something else, too." Ariana sat up straight, her eyes bright and determined. "You told me the truth always flies higher." Jordan stared at his daughter, those words hitting him like a physical force. He had told her that, the day she'd asked why some kids at school told lies about others. He'd explained that lies might seem easier, might seem to win for a while, but truth had stronger wings. "When did you get so wise?" he asked, managing a smile. "I learned from you, Daddy." She touched his wet cheek again. "Don't let them make you cry. We're not wrong. They are." A knock at the door made them both jump. Jordan's sister answered it. It was Amira, looking both exhausted and energized. "Jordan," she said, bursting in. "We've got something." She pulled up a chair, speaking quietly so Ariana wouldn't hear every detail. "Malik came through. Before he left the IT department, he made one backup of the surveillance footage from that flight. The whole thing, including what happened after you and Ariana got off." Jordan sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" "The cameras kept rolling. They caught Kara going straight to the crew area, calling Sandra Lloyd. They caught the whole conversation about how to handle you. And here's the best part. Sandra explicitly ordered them to delete all footage and correspondence about the incident. Can we prove it's real? They'll claim it's doctored." Amira pulled out a flash drive. "That's the beauty of it. Malik didn't just copy the video, he copied the entire metadata trail. Timestamps, camera IDs, system logs. It's impossible to fake that level of detail. Plus, he included other incidents he'd archived. 6 more cases of discrimination, all with the same pattern." Jordan stared at the tiny drive in his palm. Everything they needed, proof not just of one incident, but of a systematic pattern of discrimination and cover-ups. "If this is real," he said slowly, "we end it publicly." Amira nodded. "Live. No edits. No chance for them to spin it or bury it. They'll try to stop us. They might even try to arrest me on those fraud charges. That's why we do it where they least expect it. Amira leaned forward. The airline's shareholder meeting is tomorrow. Sandra Lloyd is giving a presentation on corporate culture and values. Every major investor will be there. And thanks to your company's stake in their leasing program, you still have a right to attend. Jordan looked at Ariana, still watching them curiously from the couch. Everything he'd built, everything he'd dreamed of, it had all been for her, to show her that integrity mattered, that justice was worth fighting for, that truth, in the end, would always fly higher. We'll need help, he said. Technical support to bypass their security, a way to broadcast live that they can't shut down. Already lined up, Amira assured him. Malik's got friends in their IT department who are sick of covering up dirty secrets. They'll make sure we get access to their presentation system. Jordan stood up, energy flooding back into his tired body. Send me every detail. I need to prepare. And, he hesitated, looking at his daughter, I need to make arrangements for Ariana. This could get ugly. Let me stay with you, Ariana said suddenly. They turned, surprised she'd been listening. Please, Daddy. I'm not scared. Jordan knelt beside her. Baby, tomorrow might be dangerous. These people. You said truth flies higher, she interrupted, her chin set stubbornly. I want to see it fly. Jordan looked at Amira, who shrugged. She's got a point. Besides, seeing her there might remind people what this is really about. The flash drive felt warm in Jordan's palm, heavy with the weight of truth and consequences. Tomorrow would change everything, one way or another. But looking at his daughter's determined face, he knew they'd already won the most important battle. They'd chosen truth over fear, justice over silence. As evening settled over Los Angeles, Jordan sat in Amira's car outside Meridian Air's maintenance facility. Captain Ruiz's shift was ending, and this might be their only chance to talk privately. Are you sure about this? Amira asked, checking her mirrors for any surveillance. Ruiz saw everything. He has authority other witnesses don't. Jordan watched the employee exit. And right now, we need every voice we can get. Captain Ruiz emerged from the building, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. When he spotted Jordan waiting by the fence, he hesitated, then walked over slowly. Mr. Coleman, Ruiz said, his voice careful. I heard about what happened, the accusations. You know they're lies, Captain. Jordan said quietly. You were there. You saw how it started. Ruiz glanced around the parking lot. Look, I want to help, but I've got 20 years invested in this airline. My pension, my family's security. They're framing an innocent man, Amira cut in, stepping forward. Malik Rivers, the IT tech who preserved the evidence. They broke into his apartment, planted false documents. He might face criminal charges. That made Ruiz stop. Malik? The young guy who always fixes our cockpit computers? Jordan nodded. They're destroying him because he refused to delete proof of their discrimination. Just like they're trying to destroy me. How long before they come for someone else? Ruiz leaned against the fence, conflict clear on his face. I've spent my whole career trying to stay above the politics. The sky doesn't see color. That's what I always said. But the people who control the sky do, Jordan replied. You know that better than most. What exactly are you asking me to do? Testify. Tomorrow at the shareholder meeting. Tell them what you witnessed on that flight. How Kara treated my daughter before she knew who I was. How the supervisors pressured you to change your incident report. Ruiz's head snapped up. How did you know about that? Because they do it every time, Amira said. We have proof of 6 similar cases, all buried, all covered up. Silence stretched between them. In the distance, a plane roared overhead, its lights cutting through the darkening sky. My father was a mechanic for crop dusters in Mexico, Ruiz said finally. He used to tell me, in the air, everyone is equal. Only on the ground do men create barriers. I always thought if I flew high enough, worked hard enough, those barriers wouldn't matter. He straightened his shoulders. But staying silent when we see wrong, that makes us part of the barrier, doesn't it? It does, Jordan agreed softly. I'll testify. Ruiz's voice grew firmer. Not just about your flight, about all of it. The special screening lists, the way they flag certain names, certain faces, everything I've seen but pretended not to notice. Jordan extended his hand. Thank you, Captain. As they shook hands, Jordan's phone buzzed. An email from Eleanor Price, the elderly passenger who defended Ariana during the flight. Dear Mr. Coleman, he read aloud, I've been following your struggle with horror and dismay. I may be old, but I know right from wrong. Attached is my video of that day. I've also written a statement about what I witnessed. Use it however you need. Some fights are worth losing everything for, because staying silent costs even more. With you in spirit, Eleanor Price. The video attachment showed Kara's behavior from yet another angle, capturing details they hadn't seen before. The casual cruelty in her smile, the way other crew members turned away, unwilling to intervene. Perfect timing, Amira said. Eleanor Price gives us exactly what we need. A respected white witness with nothing to gain. They can't dismiss her as having an agenda. They drove to Amira's studio across town. The small office space had been transformed into a command center, with computers, cameras, and backup power supplies filling every surface. Malik was already there, his fingers flying over keyboards as he tested their broadcast setup. Security protocols are ready, he reported. Once we go live, they won't be able to shut us down without cutting their whole network. Jordan uploaded Eleanor's video, adding it to their evidence folder. Captain Ruiz recorded his statement, his voice growing stronger with each revelation. The truth was assembling itself, piece by damning piece. Ariana sat in the corner, doing homework, but clearly listening to everything. She looked up as Jordan passed. Are you scared, Daddy? He knelt beside her. A little. But you taught me something about being brave, remember? She smiled. Doing the right thing, even when you're scared. Exactly. He kissed her forehead. And tomorrow, we're going to fly higher than they ever imagined. Through the studio windows, they could see news vans starting to gather. Word had leaked that something big was coming. Reporters paced the sidewalk, phones pressed to their ears, hungry for the story that was about to break. Amira checked their streaming setup one last time. All systems ready. Backup channels confirmed. Social media teams on standby. Jordan watched the final evidence uploads complete. Documents, videos, testimonies, the full weight of truth assembled in digital form, ready to shatter the walls of silence Meridian Air had built. Captain Ruiz stood at the window, still in his uniform, watching more media arrive. In all my years of flying, he said quietly, I've never seen a storm quite like the one we're about to fly into. Good thing we've got an experienced pilot on our side then, Jordan replied. The studio lights blazed as Jordan sat before the camera, his posture straight but relaxed. Years of boardroom presentations had taught him the power of calm authority. Amira counted down silently with her fingers. 3, 2, 1. Good evening, Jordan began, his voice steady. My name is Jordan Coleman. 2 weeks ago, my 9-year-old daughter was assaulted on a Meridian Air flight because of the color of her skin. What followed was a systematic attempt to silence us, bury the truth, and destroy my company. Tonight, that silence ends. Behind him, screens displayed documentation, each piece appearing as he spoke. First, Let me show you what really happened that day. The initial video played. Passenger footage showing Kara Jennings grabbing Ariana's wrist, dragging her from her seat. The sound of his daughter's frightened voice filled the studio. "Please stop! You're hurting me!" Ms. Jennings claimed she was following protocol. Jordan continued, "But watch what happens when I appear." The footage showed Kara's transformation, from aggressive authority to stammering apologies. Now, most companies would have addressed this immediately. Instead, Meridian Air chose retaliation. He displayed the internal emails, Sandra Lloyd's threats, the falsified complaints. They didn't just target me. They targeted everyone who dared to speak up. Malik's evidence appeared next, the infamous Priority Packs database. Names, faces, racial profiles all categorized as potential disruption risks. This system, Jordan explained, has been used to discriminate against thousands of passengers. But don't take my word for it. Listen to Captain Miguel Ruiz. The screen shifted to Ruiz's testimony. His uniform gleamed under the lights as he detailed years of witnessed discrimination, altered reports, and systemic racism. "I stayed silent too long," Ruiz admitted. "We all did." Social media counters in the corner showed viewing numbers exploding, hashtags trending. The truth was taking flight. Then came Eleanor Price's footage, a new angle showing Kara's sneering face, the deliberate humiliation in her actions. The elderly passenger's statement followed. "I've lived through segregation. I recognize its modern face. What happened to that little girl was evil wrapped in policy." Jordan leaned forward slightly. "But the most damning evidence was supposed to be destroyed. Thanks to one brave IT technician, it wasn't." The final video began playing. The aircraft's security footage showed crystal-clear audio. "Kara, that little Negro girl doesn't belong up here. I don't care who her daddy is." Sandra Lloyd's voice, sharp and clear. "Handle this quietly. We can't lose another contract to that man. Delete this footage immediately." The studio fell silent. On their monitoring screens, social media exploded. News alerts popped up everywhere. Phone lines blazed with incoming calls. "This isn't just about one flight," Jordan continued. "This is about a system that profits from prejudice, that punishes those who speak up, that teaches children they don't belong in certain seats because of their skin color." Live feeds showed crowds gathering outside Meridian Air's headquarters. Reporters swarmed the entrance. Inside their studio, phones rang constantly. A technician passed Amira a note. She held it up for Jordan. "Kara Jennings is live on Channel 4 trying to respond." They patched in the feed. Kara sat in a news studio, mascara running as she tried to defend herself. "I was just doing my job. They're twisting everything." Her voice cracked. "I'm not racist. I have black friends." The feed cut off as Kara broke down completely, falling out of her chair. Another alert. Sandra Lloyd's office was empty. Her assistant reported she'd left suddenly, deleting files from her computer. Jordan turned back to the camera. His voice grew softer but more powerful. "To every parent who's had to teach their child about prejudice too early. To every person who's been told they don't belong. To every worker who's stayed silent out of fear. This moment is for you." The viewer count passed 1 million. Then 2. Messages flooded in from around the world. "My daughter Ariana taught me something profound," Jordan continued. "She said, 'Truth always flies higher.' Today, we prove her right." He paused, letting the silence hold weight. "No child should ever have to prove they belong in the sky." Amira stepped forward and hugged him as the red recording light blinked off. Their team erupted in cheers. Phones kept ringing. Networks, newspapers, civil rights organizations all demanding interviews. Through the windows, they could see more news vans arriving. Satellite trucks lined the street. The story wasn't just flying, it was soaring. In the corner, Ariana looked up from her homework, a small smile on her face. She'd watched the whole broadcast quietly, understanding more than anyone realized. Now, she walked over and took her father's hand. The truth had taken flight, and nothing could shoot it down. The congressional hearing room hummed with tension. Cameras clicked as Senator Martinez addressed the packed chamber. Today, we examine systemic discrimination in the aviation industry, specifically the disturbing practices at Meridian Air. Kara Jennings sat alone at the witness table, her designer suit unable to mask her nervousness. Her testimony crumbled under questioning. "So you're saying the video was doctored?" Senator Chen asked. I never meant—" Kara's voice quavered. "It was company policy to monitor certain situations." "You mean racial profiling?" Senator Martinez pressed. Kara's lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, but the damage was done. By day's end, Meridian Air announced her termination. News cameras caught her fleeing the building, shielded her face with a designer handbag as reporters shouted questions. The next day, Sandra Lloyd faced the committee. Her usual corporate polish had cracked. Dark circles showed through heavy makeup as she read from prepared statements. "Ms. Lloyd," Senator Martinez interrupted, "please explain this email where you ordered the deletion of security footage." Sandra's hands trembled. "I was protecting proprietary—" "You were covering up racial discrimination," the senator corrected. "Did these orders come from above?" Sandra glanced at her lawyer, then cracked. "The CEO approved all priority packs protocols. It was considered essential to our profit metrics." The revelation sent shockwaves through the industry. Within hours, Meridian Air's stock plunged. The CEO resigned that evening, his statement citing personal reasons. Malik Rivers testified next, surrounded by federal marshals. His quiet dignity commanded attention as he detailed years of systematic discrimination. "I couldn't stay silent anymore," he explained. "Not after seeing what they did to that little girl." The committee arranged witness protection for Malik, acknowledging threats against his life. Major tech companies immediately offered him prestigious positions, impressed by his moral courage. Jordan watched it all from his office, where reporters camped outside daily. His phone buzzed constantly with messages of support. Civil rights organizations requested speaking engagements. Airline's competitors reached out with contract offers. The vindication felt hollow until Ariana hugged him that evening. "You did it, Daddy," she whispered. "You made them see the truth." Meridian Air's board called an emergency meeting. Their statement admitted institutional failures and offered Jordan a formal apology, plus generous compensation. He declined via public letter. "Apologies without change are just words. True justice requires action, not symbolism. My daughter deserves more than your regret. She deserves a world where no child faces what she faced." The letter went viral. "Ariana deserves more" trended worldwide. A week later, Jordan stood at a press podium outside his company headquarters. Cameras flashed as he adjusted the microphone. Ariana stood beside him, wearing a bright yellow dress, her head held high. "Today marks a new chapter," Jordan began, "not just for aviation, but for every industry where discrimination hides behind policy. Change doesn't come from apologies, it comes from action." He announced a new initiative, the Ariana Coleman Foundation for Transportation Equality. "We'll monitor, report, and challenge discrimination in all forms of public transport. No more deleted videos. No more buried complaints. No more children learning they're less than because of their skin color." The crowd erupted in cheers. Someone started chanting, Ariana! Ariana! The chant spread like waves. Reporters joined in. Even the security guards nodded along. Ariana squeezed her father's hand, smiling shyly at the crowd. Jordan watched his daughter's face light up, remembering her tears on that first flight. Now she stood tall, her presence commanding respect without asking for it. "The sky belongs to everyone," Jordan continued over the chants. "First class, economy, cockpit, or cabin, merit and dignity know no color. We'll make sure of that." More voices joined the chanting. Signs appeared in the crowd. "Fly fair! Ariana's Army! Equal skies for all." Former Meridian employees stepped forward, sharing their own stories of discrimination. Each testimony strengthened the movement. Each voice added power to the change. "We're not fighting for revenge," Jordan declared. "We're fighting for a future where my daughter, where all our children, can soar without artificial limits, where they're judged by their character, not their color." The chanting grew louder. "Ariana! Ariana!" Ariana waved to the crowd, her smile bright enough to light up the sky. She tugged her father's sleeve and whispered something. Jordan nodded and lifted her up to the microphone. The crowd hushed, eager to hear her speak. This 9-year-old girl who'd sparked a movement, who'd faced discrimination with dignity beyond her years, who'd taught corporate giants about humanity. The chanting continued softly, a rhythm of hope and change. "Ariana! Ariana!" She stood there, hands still clasped in her father's, facing a future where truth had indeed flown higher than lies, where justice had grown wings, where her name had become a symbol of something larger than one flight, one incident, one moment of prejudice. The crowd kept chanting, their voices rising like aircraft taking flight. "Ariana! Ariana!" 6 months later, the gleaming hangar buzzed with anticipation. Morning sunlight streamed through the massive windows, catching the fresh paint of a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Workers in navy blue jumpsuits moved with purpose, preparing for the unveiling ceremony. Jordan stood back, taking in the scene. The jet's white body shone like a blank canvas, waiting for its final touch. Beside him, Ariana bounced on her toes, paintbrush clutched in her small hand. "Ready, sweetheart?" Jordan asked, his voice soft with pride. Amira Watts approached, tablet in hand, her press badge catching the light. As communications director for Ariana's Wings, she transformed from investigative journalist to storyteller of hope. "The media's assembled outside," she reported. "And you'll love this. 300 scholarship applications came in just this morning." She smiled at Ariana. "Looks like you've inspired quite a few dreams." Malik Rivers emerged from his new command center, where state-of-the-art systems protected the initiative from any potential corporate sabotage. His quiet demeanor had given way to confident leadership. "Security systems are green," he announced, "and the live stream is ready whenever you are." The hangar doors began to roll open, revealing a crowd of reporters, aviation industry representatives, and, most importantly, families. Dozens of children from underrepresented communities, all dreaming of careers in aviation, waited with their parents. Jordan adjusted his tie, remembering the long journey here. After the congressional hearings, he'd invested his settlement money and corporate partnerships into something bigger than revenge. Ariana's Wings wasn't just an airline, it was a promise. The program offered full scholarships for pilot training, aerospace engineering degrees, and aviation management courses. Every recipient got mentorship, internships, and guaranteed job placement. The only requirement: pay it forward by mentoring the next generation. "Time for the finishing touch," Jordan said, guiding Ariana toward the hydraulic lift. As they rose alongside the aircraft's gleaming fuselage, Workers below rolled out guidelines for the special paint job. This wasn't just any corporate logo. It was Ariana's own design, practiced for weeks in her sketchbook. "Remember," Jordan whispered, "steady strokes, just like we practiced." Ariana nodded, her face set with determination. She dipped her brush into the deep blue paint. The first stroke was tentative, but each one after grew more confident. Letters began to take shape, flowing like wind currents. Below, Amira directed camera crews to capture every moment. This wasn't about publicity. It was about documenting change, about showing other children that dreams have no boundaries. Malik monitored everything from his station, but his usual vigilance had softened into wonder. He'd helped expose corruption. Now he was helping build something pure. The crowd watched in respectful silence as Ariana worked. Parents lifted their children for better views. Young faces pressed against the hangar's safety barriers, eyes wide with possibility. Jordan steadied the lift as Ariana moved along the fuselage. Her brush strokes were creating more than letters now. They were painting hope into existence. The deep blue paint caught the morning light, seeming to shimmer like the sky itself. "Almost done, Daddy," Ariana murmured, adding final touches to the last letter. As the lift descended, everyone could finally read the full text. Ariana's wings curved elegantly along the jet's side, with a subtitle beneath, "Every dream deserves to soar." Applause erupted. Camera flashes lit up the hangar. But Jordan only saw his daughter's face, beaming with the pure joy of creation. The ceremony began. Jordan approached the podium, but instead of giving his prepared speech, he motioned Ariana forward. "This is her story to tell," he said simply. Ariana stepped up, her yellow dress bright against the podium's dark wood. The crowd hushed, remembering the viral videos, the hearings, the change this child had inspired. "My daddy taught me that dreams don't have colors," she began, her voice clear and strong. "They just have wings." She explained the scholarship program in her own words, describing how every recipient would get their own pilot's logbook with her signature, how the company would help them through training, support their families, guide them toward their goals. "Because first class isn't just a seat," she continued. "It's believing in yourself, and everyone deserves that chance." The crowd's response was immediate and emotional. Parents hugged their children. Reporters wiped away tears. Industry executives who'd come expecting corporate platitudes found themselves confronting their own biases. Amira watched from the side, her journalist's instincts telling her this was more than a story. It was a movement. Her phone buzzed constantly with interview requests, but for once, the narrative needed no shaping. The truth was powerful enough. Malik stood at his station, remembering the fear he'd felt as a whistleblower. Now he saw strength in vulnerability, power in doing what's right. His security teams would protect more than data. They'd protect dreams. After the speeches, Jordan led the first tour of the aircraft. Children pressed their faces against windows, sat in cockpit seats, imagined their futures in the sky. Each one received a pilot's logbook, personally signed by Ariana. The hangar hummed with excitement as families explored, asked questions, dared to dream. Aviation professionals volunteered as mentors on the spot. Airlines called with partnership offers. Change was taking flight. Ariana tugged her father's sleeve, pointing at her painted handiwork gleaming in the sun. "Now, everyone can belong in first class," she whispered, her words carrying the weight of promise. As evening approached, Atlanta International Airport buzzed with an electric energy. Hundreds gathered around the specially decorated terminal gate, their faces glowing with anticipation. Banners hung from the ceiling, proudly displaying Ariana's Wings inaugural flight in deep blue letters that matched the aircraft's livery. Jordan adjusted his tie, watching the crowd from a quiet corner. Corporate executives mingled with scholarship recipients and their families. News crews jostled for position, their cameras trained on the floor-to-ceiling windows where the Dreamliner waited on the tarmac, its fresh paint catching the setting sun's rays. Amira orchestrated the media presence with practiced ease, directing reporters to pre-selected spots. She'd transformed the launch into more than just another corporate event. This was a celebration of change, of dreams taking flight. 5 minutes to boarding. Malik's voice crackled through Jordan's earpiece. From his command center, he monitored everything from security feeds to flight systems. No detail was left to chance, no moment unprotected. A small hand slipped into Jordan's, and he looked down to see Ariana, resplendent in her custom-made pilot's jacket. The navy blue material matched the airline's colors, with silver wings pinned to the collar. Her name was embroidered above the breast pocket in elegant script. "You look ready to fly this plane yourself," Jordan said, squeezing her hand. Ariana beamed, adjusting the jacket with her free hand. "Maybe next time," she replied with a grin that made several nearby photographers snap photos. The crowd parted as Captain Maria Rodriguez, their chief pilot and head of flight training, approached. She'd left a major airline to join Ariana's wings, inspired by the promise of mentoring the next generation. "Ready for pre-flight checks, Miss Coleman?" Captain Rodriguez asked, kneeling to Ariana's level. Ariana straightened, suddenly serious. They'd practiced this moment. "Exterior inspection complete," she recited. "Weather conditions optimal. Flight plan filed and approved. Excellent work, future captain," Rodriguez praised, making Ariana glow with pride. The boarding announcement chimed overhead, and excitement rippled through the crowd. This wasn't just any first flight. The passenger list included scholarship recipients and their families, industry partners who'd supported the initiative, and civil rights leaders who'd championed their cause. Jordan watched as Malik emerged from his command center, tablet in hand. "All systems are go," he reported. "Security sweeps complete, and we're tracking clear skies all the way to Los Angeles." Amira gathered the press for final photos as families began lining up at the gate. Many wore special pins identifying them as part of the Ariana's Wings community. Silver wings catching light like promises made real. "Daddy," Ariana tugged at Jordan's sleeve, "can we do our thing now?" Jordan smiled, knowing exactly what she meant. Before every major moment in their lives, they had a private tradition. He led her to a quiet corner, away from the cameras and crowd. They stood face to face, hands clasped between them. "What do we remember?" Jordan asked softly. "That fear can't fly," Ariana began. "That truth has wings," Jordan continued. "That the sky belongs to everyone," they finished together. Ariana threw her arms around his waist, hugging tight. Jordan held her close, breathing in the moment. 6 months ago, they'd stood in another airport, facing discrimination and hate. Now they stood in triumph, not just for themselves, but for everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. The final boarding call echoed through the terminal. Jordan straightened Ariana's jacket one last time, brushing invisible dust from her shoulders. "Ready to make history, sweetheart?" She nodded, shoulders back, chin high. Together, they walked to the gate where Captain Rodriguez waited. Cameras flashed as Ariana showed her boarding pass. Seat 1A, just like that first flight, but this time on her own terms. The jet bridge stretched before them like a path to the future. Jordan walked Ariana to the aircraft door, where the flight crew waited with warm smiles. Each one wore a special badge with Ariana's Wings logo, marking them as part of this new chapter in aviation history. "See you in Los Angeles, Daddy," Ariana said confidently, hugging him one last time before stepping aboard. Jordan watched her walk down the first-class aisle, greeting passengers by name. She knew many of them, scholarship recipients she'd helped select, families she'd met at foundation events, supporters who'd stood with them through the darkest times. Back on the tarmac, Jordan joined Amira and Malik near the observation area. Ground crew completed their final checks as the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The engines hummed to life, their steady rhythm building like a heartbeat. Jordan remembered another sunset, years ago, when he'd first dreamed of building something in the sky. He'd never imagined his daughter would be the one to make those dreams soar higher than he'd ever thought possible. The aircraft began to move, turning toward the runway with graceful purpose. Its blue lettering caught the light, Ariana's name gleaming like a beacon. Ground crews stood at attention, saluting as the jet passed. From his position, Jordan could just make out Ariana's face in the window, pressed close to the glass in excitement. The setting sun flooded the tarmac with golden light, making the whole scene glow with possibility. "Fly higher, baby girl," Jordan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You earned the sky." The jet lifted smoothly into the air, climbing through layers of clouds that glowed like molten gold in the sunset. Ariana watched the world fall away beneath her, each foot of altitude a victory, each mile a testament to dreams that refused to be grounded. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.